If the Heat is looking to improve their roster, revisiting some trade targets in Sacramento, specifically DeMar DeRozan and Malik Monk, might be the answer. Plus, which player needs the biggest physical transformation on the Heat roster? We'll answer that and more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, join more than 17,000 Heat fans and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We have a great show for you today. Daryl Morey is questioning the legitimacy of the NBA bubble finals. We're going to talk about potential Miami Heat body transformations. We'll get to all of that here in a second. But first, let's get to this report from our own Locked On Kings host, Matt George, who reported earlier this week the Kings are looking to sign Russell Westbrook, but before they do that, they're trying to trade either Malik Monk or Devin Carter before giving Westbrook a contract. There is a strange Kings angle to this, which is like, why? But Matt George could talk about that. The obvious question for our purposes, David, should the Heat be calling the Kings about either Malik Monk or Devin Carter? You've already mentioned maybe another trade candidate there in Sacramento. Let's put a pin in the DeMar DeRozan question right now. But in terms of Monk or Carter, should the Heat be trying to help out the Sacramento Kings so that they can go out and sign Russell Westbrook?
I think it behooves them to look at both players. I think you can make an argument and a different argument for each. In Carter's case, you know that it was a player that Miami was looking at prior to the draft. Obviously, there's a connection there with Anthony Carter, former Heat player, former Heat assistant coach. So there's an obvious need there also at point guard. This is a young point guard with some defensive development and some skills there. Still a rusty and kind of, I think, shaky offensive player, but there's room for growth there. And he's got enough physical tools where I think he could be viewed as your pseudo point guard of the future, depending on how you view Sarunas Jekishonis. But I think there's something to be said about acquiring a player like that because, again, he's young and you can develop him. And if you're really leaning into the youth movement, as we heard earlier this summer, he seems like the right fit for that sort of thing. In the case of Malik Monk, I think it shores up an area of need. I'm not sure what you'd have to give up to acquire him, and that's the case for both players or anybody that Miami's looking to acquire. You know that Miami's not going to go into a deal looking to give up any kind of draft assets or anything like that, so it'd have to be players currently on the roster. But I think Monk is a proven sixth man, a guy who you can get to be a microwave-type scorer. And despite Miami's depth, if you're looking to move a player like, say, Terry Rozier or something along those lines, Monk makes a lot of sense because then you have that proven scorer off the bench. I think he's a lot more consistent than Rozier has been. There are still warts to his game, certainly, but the other benefit I'm seeing from bringing in a guy like Monk is a friendship with Bam Adebayo. And if you're looking to solidify your relationship with your cornerstone player, because there are concerns, at least from my position, from my point of view, there are concerns about whether or not Bam Adebayo might be that next generational type player to say, I'm looking to force a trade out of Miami. If that's the case, then you want to be able to at least make things as smooth as possible by saying, look, we're bringing in somebody that you're familiar with, a former teammate from Kentucky, et cetera. And I think Monk not only fits an area of need, but again, there's also the benefit of being able to placate Adebayo.
Yeah, to be clear, you're not reporting that.
No,
disgruntled, but you're just worried if, a year, 2-3 years from now, does Bam look around and be like, what are we really doing here?
Fans are spoiled to the sense that think that every player that gets disgruntled, every star level player is going to say, like, I want to force my way to Miami. That generally has been the case, but you have to look inward sometimes too.
We did the whole thing. We did this literally with Jimmy Butler. Who's going to be the disgruntled player that wants to play with Jimmy Butler? And, I took a lot of flack for it at the time, but I kept saying, what if Jimmy Butler is the disgruntled player who says, get me out of here? So, and that, of course, eventually happened. So I was right. Victory lap for me. That said, I like Malik Monk. I'm actually higher on Malik Monk than I think general NBA consensus is I think he's a high flight scorer. I'm not saying that he's an all-star. He's a very effective scorer. He's developing as a passer. There was points last year where I thought he was a better playmaker passer than De'Aaron Fox was for Sacramento. Yeah. Frankly, I'm a little confused by why Sacramento would say we need Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook to run our offense instead of Malik Monk. I think Monk's better than both of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
But whatever. I mean, Sacramento's going to do what Sacramento does, which is make mistakes. But I guess I say all that. I don't know what the spot is for Malik Monk on this roster after having acquired Norm Powell. You could just say, hey, he replaces Terry Rozier. Okay, fine. What's Rozier's spot on this roster? You have 3 guards who are going to have to get out there between Hero, Powell, and Davion Mitchell, neither of which is a sort of traditional point guard. And as much as Monk has improved as a playmaker, he's also not a traditional point guard. He's looking to call his own number first and other numbers second. Just like Hero, just like Powell. So I don't really know where he fits in. So you combine that with, all right, where is he really going to play? And now also, he's making $20 million this year, $20 million the next year. He's got a player option 3 years from now for like $21 or $22 million. He's expensive. And he's also eating into that future cap space flexibility that Miami wants to have in 2026. So if you're going to basically trade, let's call it Terry Rozier plus stuff. But if you're going to trade Terry Rozier for Malik Monk, are you going to look at Monk as being one of the big free agent acquisitions of 2026? Because I would argue Miami would be better off prioritizing other players at other positions with that space, as much as I would like somebody like Monk. Now, Devin Carter, that's interesting to me. But then you run into the same problem. What's it going to cost? Does this overlap with Davion Mitchell? He's just as unproven as Yakachonis at this point. So they're going to be battling for minutes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a question that you have to ask if you're the front office and if that's something that you want to be taking on.
Which player would you rather have to develop? Like, Carter
between Yakachonis and Carter?
Yeah.
I would like to have both, but because you have Davion Mitchell, I just think that they have the same skill set and they basically play the same role. So I would basically just say, give me Yakachonis because he's different. And I have Davion Mitchell, and we believe in Davion Mitchell, and we like Davion Mitchell. So
Carter becomes superfluous at that point.
Yeah, and then you just gave Mitchell the new contract. As much as I like Carter, I like Monk and I like Carter, but there's a difference between do you like these guys or do you like them for the Heat? I like them. I think they would thrive in other places. I don't know that Miami is the right spot for them. But the more interesting player here is the one you teased at the Open, DeMar DeRozan. And there was a local radio host, and I forget the name, and I'm sorry, but like he had floated out there that if the Sacramento Kings, and I local of Sacramento, if the Sacramento Kings trade for Jonathan Kuminga, because it's them and the Suns who are reportedly engaged with the Warriors on Kuminga trade talks. So if the Kings somehow land Kuminga, this radio host said that they are planning to then move DeRozan to make room for Kuminga. And then he floated out the idea of would they send DeRozan to Miami, which of course there's a history there of Miami being interested in DeRozan last summer. Would they send DeRozan to Miami for, let's say, Terry Rozier's expiring and a couple of second-round picks? That to me is interesting.
No, I don't think so. I can't. It's not that I don't believe in DeRozan. I think he's still a very solid producer. I just think also that was the kind of move that you and I had talked about in terms of being able to get somebody who can generate offense fairly easily. Well, then they went ahead and did a much better deal for a better player, I think, in Norm Powell. So it's not that DeRozan couldn't have helped Miami. I just don't know he's going to be in a position to help Miami at this point in time. Even if it's just going to cost. If it would be a Terry Rozier for DeRozan trade straight up, yes. Because I think DeRozan's still going to be a better player. If you have to give up draft assets in order to do so, even second-round picks, I'm going to go with a no on that. He's a better player, but again,
where would he play?
He's coming off the bench, and is DeRozan going to be happy with that idea? Probably not.
Or you're starting Bam at center and having Wiggins and DeRozan as your forwards alongside Hero and Powell, and that feels a lot like the Kings last year. And that's not a good thing for the record. Like that's that's a lot of scoring in certain places and not enough ball handling at all, and not really enough defense outside of Bam. I don't know that that's the answer there.
No. You're getting him with the idea that he's going to be coming off the bench, and if he buys into that, that's fantastic.
Maybe he would.
And that's the case. And if you could do it Rozier for DeRozan straight up, sure, that's fine. I don't know why Sacramento would do that deal, but again, Sacramento's going to Kings all over themselves.
It's true, and like maybe they look at Terry Rozier and like they're like, that's the guy. What's everybody got an issue with? We didn't have League Pass last year. So I don't know. The other part about DeRozan, we brought this up before in earlier conversations about him, but his contract for next year is guaranteed for only the $10 million. So you could waive him if you wanted to try to create another $10 to $15 million in cap space next summer. You could potentially do that, but then he's also eating into your space by $10 million at minimum next year, which isn't nothing. So that's something that they would have to consider too if they're still trying to maintain that cap space for 2026. To me, and you've said this already, but once you made the Norm Powell trade, you kind of punted on these others, just one-dimensional scoring type players, whether it's Monk or DeRozan. It's, you know what, we kind of did this. We have Powell. We got him for next to nothing. We got to address other needs if we're going to make any other moves this offseason. All right.
Rank them real quick. Monk, DeRozan, Carter.
I would go DeRozan, Monk, Carter.
Okay.
I would just do that just because you could still feasibly get off the DeRozan money if you had to.
Yes. No, that's fair. I like that.
Quick update to yesterday's episode about Marcus Smart. Anthony Chang reported after we had got done recording that the Heat did not trade for Smart because the Wizards were asking for draft assets in addition to Terry Rozier in that potential swap, which is basically what you and I thought had happened there. But we just wanted to clarify that with the latest update. Coming up next, Daryl Morey has some issues with the NBA bubble. We'll talk about whether he's right or wrong. I think you guys know where we're going to land on this. Coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Let me tell you, when you start using an app like Monarch Money, it's so easy to track all of where your spending is going, and you'll be surprised at just how much money you might be able to save by cutting back on a few expenses, whether it's that extra trip out or maybe a few purchases for meals at home that you could have saved. That all adds up. And it might just seem like a small amount on a week-to-week basis, but over the course of a month and over the course of the year, you're talking about hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars that you could be saving. And who doesn't want that, especially if you're gearing up for a big purchase? And that's where Monarch Money really helps you out. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. You get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. It's been more than 5 years since people arrived at in Disney World for the NBA bubble, and Wednesday marked the anniversary of the first games played in the bubble. So, of course, we remember what happened, the Lakers beating the Heat in the bubble finals. Looking back on that run, Daryl Morey told The Athletic that people around the league think the Lakers championship in the bubble should be marked by an asterisk. Here's the full quote. Had the Rockets won the title, I absolutely would have celebrated it as legitimate, knowing the immense effort and resilience required. But no, Daryl Morey could not stop there. He goes on to say, yet everyone I speak to around the league privately agrees that it doesn't truly hold up as a genuine championship. Perhaps the lasting legacy of the NBA bubble is that the NBA should be proud of its leadership at both the beginning and end of the pandemic, even though the champion will forever be marked by an asterisk. End quote. David, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a load of crap is this?
About a 40. It smacks so much of sour grapes, and the fact that, again, he says it. He's like, he says it. I'm gonna be a total hypocrite here, and that's basically what he's saying. He's like, if the Rockets had won it, I would punch anybody in the face who dared say it deserved an asterisk. But because we lost and the Lakers won it, Totally
He even goes on to
deserving.
explain why it would have been legitimate because of the resilience and the effort required.
Yes.
I have been on the record, and I know a lot of people have been on the record. I don't think that if you want to give that an asterisk, fine. But as long as that asterisk marks that it was harder than a lot of other championships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The point, and I think somebody else made it there, is that, yeah, travel has to be taken. I think Varden, the author of the article himself, said that travel is certainly a factor, but it's so much less of a factor. I'm not going to say it's not a factor. If you've got let's say a Boston LA series and you have to travel from Los Angeles to Boston, that's fine. How many trips are you taking over the course of even a 7-game series? 2? Like 1 to Boston, 1 back to Los Angeles? That's not a lot.
There's also, people always factor, oh, well, you didn't have to travel for those away games. Okay, but you also didn't get the benefit of the home games. So to me, it's a wash.
Right. All of that is so ridiculous. Like the bubble was, I mean, you had players talking about the bubble, and I know maybe some people don't want to hear about this, and it's been 4 or 5 years, as Barton wrote, and so maybe you've kind of disregarded this, but people were having like PTSD of being there, like the idea of being isolated, even at a resort where so many basic needs are catered to. It's still a lonely and kind of unhappy feeling, and you're watching so much going on. I mean, I love that I was able to cover the Heat during that particular moment in time, because even though I was able to hear from the players and talk to them regularly as they went on this finals run, was such an amazing experience. And you could see that they were, I mean, it was anguish for them. Like, it was difficult to be separated from your families, to be separated from your friends, to not be able to have any of the comforts of the things you do as a young millionaire basketball player. And at the same time, when the world is falling apart around you and you're worried about COVID, you're worried about disease, you're worried about social unrest, and so many different things happening.
And players in the bubble were split on whether or not they should be there for a variety of the reasons you just talked about.
Yes. I mean, we've all forgotten the Milwaukee Bucks, protesting George Floyd, and it's like Udonis Haslem having to speak because he's a powerful voice in the NBA as a veteran player, et cetera. Like, there were so many things going on. Like, every day, players were like, I don't know if I want to even be here. And then to be able to go through all that,
and having that seep into their performance on the court, there was a lot of teams that were just not cut for it. And Philadelphia, I don't even know if that's a insult. Like, I don't know who among us would have been cut out for that. And to me, when I think about the bubble, I do not think, had those playoffs been played normally, I do not think it would have been Lakers versus Heat. I also don't know that matters. No. Because I think it is not a coincidence to me that it was those two teams. It was Miami Heat culture, the discipline, the basketball over everything, the focus that this organization has had for the last 30 plus years. Yeah. It is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence to me that team with a ton of talent made it to the finals. That is not a coincidence. It's also not a coincidence that the team that they faced was led by LeBron James, who is easily the most disciplined superstar that we've ever seen, maybe in sports.
Yeah.
It's like him and Tom Brady. That's it. End of list. It is not a surprise to me that team, led by that player, made it to the NBA Finals in that particular environment. That does not mean that there's an asterisk, right? Unique things happen every year. You want to give an asterisk to team? If you want to start handing out asterisks, okay. Here's your asterisk, Toronto Raptors in 2019.
Yep.
Here's your asterisk,
Cleveland 2016.
Cleveland in 2016. Like, here, Golden State in 2015. Like, you want to start handing them out? We could play this game. Nobody wants to do that. You do not want to get into the sport of delegitimizing things that are very, very difficult to accomplish and therefore should be celebrated.
Absolutely. I think Morey's full of crap. I think we've all collectively forgotten it. No, I mean, look, in the words of James Harden, somebody I never thought he'd quote, Daryl Morey's a liar. I mean, that's coming from his boy, like, for many, many years, a guy that they got along with very well when they were working together in Houston. And it's just, Harden is not a believer in Morey, and neither am I. So I think it's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm glad that we're kind of looking back at the bubble. I'm glad that our former colleague Ben Golliver was asked about it because he wrote the quintessential book on the experience of the Orlando
Correct.
bubble. So anybody who hasn't read Bubble Ball should absolutely pick up a copy because it's still a great book and kind of really puts you there to understand just how difficult it was from the player's perspective, from a media member's perspective, and talks about everything from the level of basketball being played to all the different things that were happening around the country. And so it's a great slice of a really pivotal moment in NBA history. And so I think it's worth everybody reading.
The reason we brought it up also is because the Lakers championship is the one that's debated whether or not it should have an asterisk or not. And by the way, I just want to comment on the Daryl. Privately, everybody in the league agrees that it doesn't count as much or whatever. That's also not true with the people that I have conversations with in the league. First of all, nobody's bringing it up. And second of all, nobody delegitimizes it. Everybody agrees. The further we get away from it, we agree even more how hard it was in that moment. But the reason we bring it up on this in particular show is because the Heat were the team the Lakers played, and the Heat made it that far. And if you're going to give the Lakers an asterisk in that title, you're also giving the Heat an asterisk for even being there.
Absolutely.
And that's not something that you and I, not on our watch, David, not on our watch.
Absolutely
not. Speaking of watch, Body Watch.
Ooh,
how's that for a transition?
That's really nice. Expert.
So the headline of the week across the NBA belongs to Luka Doncic's body transformation that was covered in Men's Health on the heels of Luka's before and after. I actually thought it would be fun to ask the hypothetical, if you could choose one Heat player to dramatically remake his body in any kind of way, it doesn't have to be in the Luka slim down thing, just any kind of body transformation, who would you pick? Go ahead.
I think there are two players that I'd look at, so I will pick one, and maybe you'll pick the other. And you're absolutely right; it wouldn't make sense because nobody on the Heat roster is that kind of doughy, soft look that we've seen from. I don't look, and we've talked to the Luka, we've stood next to him. At no point in time where we're like, oh yeah, he's kind of flabby. Like NBA soft is not real life soft, and I've told this before. I don't know if this is an example worth bringing up, but I remember even in 2015 and getting my first credentials to cover the Oklahoma City Thunder when they were in Orlando, and Kendrick Perkins was on that roster, and he had been the player around social media and even amongst friends and other people that love basketball covering. It's like, oh, Perkins is a fat ass. Perkins is that dude had a six pack. So NBA flabby is not real life flabby. Like maybe he looks soft on TV. That ain't the real case in the locker room. And Luka certainly fits there. But there's no denying that Luka has absolutely transformed into a much slimmer version of who he was. But that doesn't apply to any player on the Heat roster. So the player I'm looking at as far as a physical transformation, gotta go Kel'el Ware. Absolutely. Put on 30 pounds of muscle. I want to see full-blown muscle watch for a guy like Ware to just transform over the course of one summer, still maintaining. I want to hear about him doing hot yoga to improve flexibility. I want to see a full regimen of what he does at the gym, headphones, no headphones, whatever it takes. Just go out there and put I want to see sets, number of reps. I want to see, how much time he takes in between sets, everything. I want to see a full, absolute blasted workout from him and just have him put on 30 pounds of muscle over the course of one summer. I know that's not likely without the use of some certain medicinal products, but at the same time, that's what I'm looking at. He'd have to be able to get to that point, and for him to be able to take his game to the next level, I think it's vital for him to put on muscle. So that he's absolutely who I'm picking.
It would be the magic body transformation, right? Because like you said, to put on a 7'1" frame, 30 additional pounds of muscle is very difficult in one summer, especially if you're just 20 years old and your body just isn't ready for that, right? That's a big part of this too, but that's not the question. We played a hypothetical and it was magical, and that's what happened. And that's the right answer. That is the number one answer, right? I do disagree that there's only two players. I think the other player that you were thinking of was Jovic.
No, because he's already done it. Have you seen him?
Yeah,
Jovic.
I guess I would. Can I get another 15 pounds of muscle? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just keep going in the side. So who was the other player?
Tyler Hero. Like
he's also already done it.
Yeah, but it seems like
how much bigger do we need this guy to get?
Full jacked. I want to see him be able.
You want to see him like Jalen Brunson out there? Like, what do you?
Yeah, I do. I want to see him toss Amen Thompson to the floor, not the other way around.
Okay. So I'm
Pretty
gonna
off there with
go.
that one, huh?
I
Who could use it?
I hesitate to
Jaime?
bring this up.
Jaime? Yeah.
If anybody can use the specific Luka Doncic regimen, it might be Jaime Jaquez Jr.
Yeah.
Similar to Luka, and you're right. Like, there's a difference between, like, none of these guys are fat. There is a difference between whatever these players are and elite conditioning, though. And
Yes.
Luka, because of injuries last year, was not in elite condition, right? He was carrying more weight than he was accustomed to. He was slower than he had been prior, and he had to change that. And I, for one, by the way, I don't think anything has to do. I think a lot less of this than it's being made out to be has to do with Luka getting some sort of revenge on Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks. I think he got hurt for the longest regular season injury he's ever had, and was out of shape after that, and just said, I need to get back in shape, and that's what he did. So
Yeah.
I think something similar could happen for Jaime Jaquez Jr., who was clearly not as well conditioned last year as he was as a rookie, had lost a step, I think very clearly last year as opposed to when he was a rookie. And I think similarly to Luka, a lot of that could be because of injuries, right? He hurt his ankle in the preseason, and then he was dealing with the stomach flu a couple of different times during the regular season, battling nagging injuries all year long. It felt like he could never really get right. And you just look at the numbers, by the way, and it's not just the scoring numbers and things like that. You just look at how many dunks he had last year. He went from 29 dunks and was in the dunk contest as a rookie, 29 dunks across the regular season, to just 12 dunks last year. He wasn't flying high. That did not look like a guy who ever would dream of participating in a dunk contest. So my answer would be Jaime Jaquez Jr., because I think if he can get into that just absolute, go from where he is now to chiseled elite conditioning, that to me would mean a world of difference in Jaime's game.
Absolutely. I think it would change things around. I think it would improve speed, mobility, just in terms of being able to draw more contact and things of that sort. I don't think that's necessarily a weakness in his game, but you just want to be able to have all those things improve
and withstand
across
that
the
contact
board
without developing those injuries.
Absolutely. And I think, like, who couldn't benefit from that? But
Right.
there are already players that are at that point, and I think Jaime is not quite there yet. So, I'm in a way, I'm kind of glad that we haven't really seen much of him over the summer, and I hope that when he does eventually come out into public view again, like, that we do see that transformation. Like, I want him to be one of the names that's absolutely involved in Muscle Watch once the season starts.
Instead of going on a Men's Health cover, he should come on Locked On Heat and just do the cover shoot for us. Just come on the show, take his shirt off, and just be like, here, this is it. What do you guys want to see? Show everybody how great a shape he's in. Maybe not. I don't know. It's up to him. Thanks for making.
No.
Thanks.
We want to extend the invitation, right? Put it out there.
I am extending it. Jaime, the invitation's always open. He's been on the show before. He could come on the show again. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.